Got it. Onion. All right, 6 o'clock. Here we go. Okay. You're welcome. For the recording, welcome back. We are ACI Course 2, Class 2, but finishing up Class 1 first. It's September 14th, 2023. Let's gather our minds here as we usually do. Please bring your attention to your breath until you hear from me again. Now bring to mind that being who for you is a manifestation of ultimate love, ultimate compassion, ultimate wisdom. And see them appear there with you. They are gazing at you with their unconditional love for you. Smiling at you with their holy great compassion. Their wisdom radiating from them. That beautiful golden glow encompassing you in its light. And then we hear them say, bring to mind someone you know who's hurting in some way. Think about how much you would like to be able to help them. And how the worldly ways that we try fall short. How wonderful it would be if we could also help them in some deep and ultimate way, a way through which they would go on to stop their distress forever. We are learning that it's possible. And if it's true, then we would want to grow that wish into a longing, into an intention. And maybe hope we could grow it into a determination someday. And so we turn our minds to that precious holy being. We know that they know what we need to know, what we need to learn, what we need to do to become one who can help this other in this deep and ultimate way. And so we ask them, please teach us that. And they are so happy that we've asked. Of course, they agree. Our gratitude arises. We want to offer them something exquisite. And so we think of the perfect world they are teaching us how to create. We imagine we can hold it in our hands, and we offer it to them, following it with our promise to practice what they teach us, using our refuge prayer. Here is the great earth, filled with fragrant incense and covered with the blanket of flowers. The great mountain, 4 lands, wearing the jewel of the sun and the moon. In my mind, I make them the paradise of a Buddha and offer it all to you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryantayami. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may I reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing in this class and the rest, may all beings reach their total awakening for the benefit of all others. Okay. So last class, we learned about the perfection of wisdom, and we learned the brief definition of that perfection of wisdom, right? And that brief definition of the perfection of wisdom is what? Anybody? Ale. Read it from your papers if you need to.
I have that definition of perfect of wisdom, the knowledge of a person of the greater way, with which they perceive emptiness, and which is imbued with the wish for enlightenment, bodhicitta.
Right. The short version being the perception of emptiness with bodhicitta in your heart. And I know the answer key gave the definition that Ale gave. So either one is fine. Seeing emptiness directly imbued with bodhicitta is what perfection of wisdom refers to.
Can we refer the picture planets. That's like is the bodhicitta perceived when you perceive emptiness directly?
Bodhicitta is, there's a bodhicitta that we experience when we see the face of every being and love them. And there's bodhicitta that is the direct perception of emptiness. And when that bodhicitta, the direct perception of emptiness, is experienced by someone who goes into it with this strong motivation to be the one that brings everybody to that, then part of the experience after seeing emptiness directly will be that heart opening experience. So it's like, how do you see emptiness directly with that heart opening experience if it doesn't happen until afterwards? So it's not the actual heart opening experience that you have to have had first before your emptiness directly is your perfection of wisdom. But there is some strong experience that makes it such that our wish to reach Buddhahood for the benefit of all is now like simmering in the background all the time. And it happens along the path of preparation when we're studying and working with the idea of mental seeds and seeing suffering in our world and recognizing more and more that it's all just a big mistake. And we get this like heart twisting feeling that it's also absurd. All this suffering is so terribly absurd. Because if we all just stop responding so selfishly and ignorantly to the things that happen to us, we could turn it all around really fast. So to what extent that needs to be imbued in our mind for the emptiness directly to be our perfection of wisdom is hard to say going into it. We'll know we had it when, as we're coming out of direct perception of emptiness, we have the heart opening experience. So maybe it takes those two to confirm that our experience of the direct perception now is our perfection of wisdom, because we heard that we could have that experience and become Arya, superior to what we were before, but not yet have the perfection of wisdom in our mind. So Ali points out a good point. You know, which bodhicitta are we talking about that you need to have infused in your mind? So we're studying from a root text, a main text. Here it goes again. The Ornament of Realization. Who wrote that? It's a trick question, right? Who taught it first? Somebody tell me.
Maitreya.
Right, Lord Maitreya. Who wrote it down?
Master Asanga.
Master Asanga, right. So technically, if somebody says, who wrote the Ornament of Realizations, you can debate with them. You know, and it's like nobody wrote it. Maitreya taught it, and Asanga wrote it down. That's kind of fun. So, but apparently that text, in order to read and to really understand its nuances, is too much for us beginners. And so we study from a commentary. And as Geshe Michael went through the commentaries, he came across one that is a commentary to somebody else's commentary to that text. And that's the commentary we're studying from. And that was written and taught by someone named Kedrub J, but not the Kedrub J that we know of as Jetson Kappa's main disciples. This is Kedrub Tempa Darge, who's one of Kedrub J's students, right? So in the lineage, but I mixed them up for a long time. I thought this was Kedrub J's teaching. Kedrub Tempa Darge, his dates were 1493 to 1568. You know, you learn it for your homework, you write it down, and then you're welcome to forget it. Just keep it in mind where they are in the lineage, right? A little past Jetson Kappa. And that frame of reference, 1500. And I always like to think, what was going on in my country in 1500? Not much. What was going on in Europe in 1500s? A lot, right? Comparing. Pretty different world, Tibet and India in 1500s. Then the next question on your quiz, what was the definition of the Dharma jewel? And that's where I stopped in last class. I'm so sorry. So we had gotten to the three jewels, talking about the three jewels. We learned that the Buddha jewel is the ultimate place of refuge, the one who has completely satisfied both needs. We'll talk more about that later. The Buddha jewel means somebody who's already a Buddha. And somebody who's already a Buddha, they have to have those three qualities to be able to help us. Knowledge, they need to know what we need. Love, they need to care about us enough that they want us to know what they know about what we need to know. And then they need to have the power to help us, which if they could, they would just reach into us, grab our karmic seeds, crush them into powder, swallow them, and we'd be fixed. They can't do that. What they can do is teach us, because they've made all the mistakes in the process of their transformation from suffering to totally enlightened being. And so they know like how to help us. They'll teach and share and guide and nudge like an amazing parent would. And we can be like 2-year-olds and 16-year-olds and fight with them every step of the way. Or we can decide, no, they really do have my best interest at heart. I'm going to work with them and see what I can do. They're trying to help us learn the principles of how to stop suffering. And then they're willing to be situations in which we have opportunities to try it on for size. Where we could say we're being tested. We're not being tested. our own seeds ripen and our reaction ripens, and we either let ourselves act from our reaction, or we recognize, is this the actual reaction I want to do to be behaving consistent with how my teacher has taught me? That it is always our choice. So Buddhas have knowledge, love, and power, because without teaching us, they're pretty useless to us. So the next jewel is called the Dharma jewel. The Dharma is the teachings in whatever form, oral ones, written ones, audio ones, any form. The Dharma also refers to the realizations in people's minds, right? The things they come to know for sure as a result of what the Dharma teachings have taught them. The Dharma jewel, however, is talking about these realizations that we're gaining. And in particular, when those things that we now know for sure, which is what we mean by realization, when those realizations lead to a change in behavior that becomes permanent, it leads to what's called a cessation of something. So we get a definition of the Dharma jewel. The definition of the Dharma jewel is the enlightened side of truth as a cessation or a path or both. The enlightened side of truth as a cessation or a path or both. So the enlightened side of truth means that which will get us out of suffering. It really means the teachings, but the formal teachings and also the kind of teachings that we get as we go through our day, and weird stuff happens and we really have to struggle and we say, man, did I get a teaching out of that? It happens to all of us. And it's a level of wisdom to be able to look at some problem that we encounter or have encountered and say, that was a teaching, instead of just complaining about the whole bad situation and blaming it on somebody else. So a path, remember, means a realization, something that we've achieved, something we've come to know for sure, like the three principal paths: renunciation, bodhicitta, correct worldview, like we were speaking about before. A new knowing, we can call a new knowing a realization when, because of what we now know for sure, we can in fact change a behavior, stop a behavior that was either habitual, automatic, or we even liked so much we wanted to do. But because of what we now know, we've set about to change that behavior. And sooner or later, that behavior becomes a cessation. So like, you've got that yelling person in your life, whoever they are, or maybe multiple ones. And because you're gaining this realization about where the unpleasantness of yelling comes from, we recognize that when I yell at anybody, I'm making this situation gonna happen again. And however I react to that yelling person, I'm gonna make that experience for me in the future. And I recognize that every time they yell, right, this is my reaction. I want to yell back, lie about it, cry, run and hide, whatever it is. And I recognize or realize that I have been unaware that wherever it is that I make other people feel like that is where that is really coming from. So there's really multiple things going on when you're in the yelling person situation. Our tendency is to yell back. And we understand that if we allow that tendency to yell back to actually happen, we've perpetuated stuff. When we have this realization that that's true, we'll still want to yell back, but we'll be able to choose some other behavior. And every time we do that, every time we want to yell at somebody, whether it's yelling back or being the yeller, we go and choose something different. We are burning off the yelling and being yelled at seeds, and we will eventually run out of them. And we will have a cessation of the whatever the impetus for yelling at someone. Usually it's anger, right? We could say we will have a cessation of anger as a result of the realization. They didn't happen at the same time. But without the realization, we wouldn't have ever stopped the behavior that leads to the cessation of the yelling of our own yelling at others and feeling the need to yell whatever it is. Okay. So it's called a protection because the protection is in choosing a different behavior. And we'll talk about it when we get to class 2. It's like, what do we expect from our protection? We call the fire department and we expect them to put out the fire. Does our realization, don't set fire to other people's things, stop the fire that's already burning our house down? No. We still call the fire department, but we fully understand that to what extent we blame somebody else or feel offended, right, hurt by the fire is the extent to which our ignorance is still driving our reaction. And I'm so sorry. Okay. Cessation. So how do we reach this enlightened side of truth? We need to rely on contemporary beings who are in the system ahead of us. We really rely on the seniors in high school when we're freshmen, right, to show us where the cantina is, because they've been there. So in that way, we have this third jewel called the Sangha jewel. The Sangha technically refers to a quorum of monks or nuns that's needed to carry out any given ceremony. So for some ceremonies, you need 5 to have a Sangha. For making a new nun, you need 12 to have a Sangha. We use the term, any group of people who study together is our Sangha. And that's okay to use it in that way. But then Sangha Jewel has really nothing to do with any of that. Sangha Jewel means anyone who's seen emptiness directly, with or without the bodhicitta in their heart. You become Sangha Jewel once you've seen emptiness directly. And in that instant that you've seen emptiness directly and then you're out of it, you have also become Dharma Jewel, haven't you? Because now you have the experience of the realization of ultimate reality and dependent origination. You saw the dependent origination going into the ultimate reality. And then you now have, at the very least, the cessation of any doubt of your path to where you're going. Whether your goal is nirvana or your goal is Buddhahood, that niggling little, is this really the right path? Will it really work? Can I really do it? Gone. Doubt in the path is gone, a cessation. So you have a realization and you have a cessation both. So you qualify as Dharma Jewel. Doesn't matter whether you wear robes. Technically, doesn't even matter whether you've ever declared yourself as a Buddhist, right? You don't have to be Buddhist. We're talking in the context of Buddhism, of course, in these courses. So the definition of Sangha Jewel is a realized being who possesses any number of the 8 fine qualities of knowledge and liberation. A realized being who possesses any number of the 8 fine qualities of knowledge and liberation. And I'm not going to tell you what those 8 fine qualities are yet. They come later because it's not so important here. The important piece is a realized being. Because what that term means is they are out of the direct perception of emptiness. So they've had it at least once. Then the last homework question up for one is, what's ultimate refuge? So ultimate refuge is any refuge when the journey along the path has reached the final goal. Any refuge when the journey along the path has reached the final goal. So here we're using the term path as a cessation, not a cessation, an ongoing effort, series of experiences in which we are applying what we know. So we're using path in the regular kind of way. We're going down this path. But sometimes we use path as the realization, which has nothing to do with walking down a path, but it has everything to do with how we interact with everything we encounter as we walk along the path to our nirvana or Buddhahood. So I'll be using the term path kind of interchangeably. And it seems funny to me that in a system where language is used so precisely, that there are these little pieces where it's redundant or vague. And I think it's on purpose. Like, I think there's something in there that is worth thinking about, cooking. Why don't they use a different path? different word for path and for realization. Why is it the same? I think it will help. Yeah, you'll get an aha about that someday. So ultimate refuge is the protection that we have once we've reached our Buddhahood, once we've reached our goal. Is there any more suffering? No. Is there even the suffering of not being able to help everybody stop their suffering? No. Right? Doesn't mean everybody else has stopped their suffering yet. But you're not suffering as a result. You are perpetuating your compassion, love, knowledge, and power. So these concepts, what it is to take refuge, worldly refuge, and refuge in the three jewels, which is the distinction we're going to make in this next class. These are the very basis of all of our future realizations. So it's an important part. And we have a tendency to just sort of take it for granted. I took formal refuge. Now I have refuge. I say it 6 times a day like I'm supposed to. I'm taking refuge. But every time I get annoyed with David, and either ignore him or snap back, it's like I am nowhere close to refuge. And every time I catch myself recognizing up my seeds and choose some different response, I am taking refuge and I am under the three jewels protection. They won't stop the speeding bullet, but I am under protection. It's a shift. Okay. Okay, so now we're on to class 2. Yes, ma'am?
Can I ask a question about the ultimate refuge?
Yes.
So that means when I become a Buddha, only at that moment I have reached ultimate refuge because the suffering has stopped.
Yes.
However, as a Buddha, I perceive every living being as a suffering being, and I mean that they perceive themselves as a suffering being.
Yes.
And as a empty being, and I see their potential. So
Right.
how is that I have stopped the suffering? Because I still see them suffering. So I don't feel any, I don't know, compassion.
You don't suffer. You have holy great compassion. That's not a suffering. That's a bliss. That's another bliss.
So
To have the love and holy great compassion as you perceive these fully enlightened beings that you see, seeing themselves as still suffering beings. And spontaneously, effortlessly, you are what they need to bring themselves along the path to their goal. And you can be that, and it's nothing but bliss and more bliss. I know it's hard to grasp. How can they see me suffering so badly and enjoy it? They're not enjoying it. They're compassioning and loving and trying to help. And it's up to me. It's up to me how I perceive it. Okay, so we'll get there because we're going through it again. Okay. So we have worldly refuges, things that we go to for protection. The obvious ones, police, fire department, etc. The less obvious ones are We go for refuge in money, in our relationships, in our jobs, in our whatever you go to when you feel a little bit distressed. You grab a Coke, a chocolate, a tea. What do you grab for that little bit of comfort that you need? That's a kind of refuge. We are spontaneously recognizing a need, and we're going to something to get that need met. And then in worldly ways, does the nice cup of tea solve the problem? No. Does it give me a little comfort in the moment? Yes, that's nice. Now I can be stronger to go and approach the problem again. It is a kind of refuge. It's just not a refuge that will help stop the cycle that is causing and perpetuating the distress that we needed that extra Coke to cope with. It does not mean that, oh, I see the money that I get from my job is not really where the ability to care for my family comes from. And so if that's the case, yay, I get to quit my job. And I should be able to continue caring for my family, just by giving things away. So whatever is in our house, in our refrigerator, family, let's just put it out on the street and let everybody have it. And your family goes, yeah, well, where's our next meal going to come from? Oh, don't worry, right? Your karmic seeds will ripen and it'll just show up. Is that possible? Yeah, it's possible. Is it likely in our world? Not in my world, I have to admit. Although I'm closer to it in my immediate world than I have ever been before. But, right, the wrong conclusion about where the fact that our worldly refuges don't work is, well, I'm just going to quit doing them then. And that's the wrong conclusion. It's perfectly fine to go for a nice cup of tea when you need a little refreshment. It's perfectly fine to have a Coca-Cola. It's maybe not so fine to have a whole 6-pack, right? Or a 5th of vodka for other reasons. But we're not saying just ditch your life. And it's an important piece because our mind might want to go there. If our life is pretty stressed out and we'd really like to just avoid the whole mess, we'll use a teaching on refuge to say, see, none of it works. I'm leaving. But your karma goes with you. So you just end up with the same kind of stress from living under the bridge that you did when you were with your family. So you might as well stay put and figure it out. So what does it really mean to take refuge? Whether it's worldly refuge or Buddhist refuge. I'm getting to my screen share because I gave you your vocabulary like this, which I will send you if I didn't do it already. For class 1, I'll send it to you. And this has class 2. Okay. So I know it's hard to read. I'm so sorry. Okay. But this is what we're looking at. The definition of refuge. Don't you love definitions? In Tibetan, it is Yul Shenla Rangtopki Rewa. Let me get the words right. Rewa Chawe Sempa Kamdre Tseni. So this word Tseni, it means the definition of. So we'll see it a lot through the course of our ACI study. the definition of kamdre, going for refuge, but it's plural here. The definition of going for refuge. Sempa means, the word means movement of the mind. Any movement of the mind. Geshe Michael uses it here as meaning any thought, but movement of the mind isn't always thought. I think of thought as actually word thought. And this means just any movement in our awareness. So the definition of refuges is any movement of the mind. Now we need to go back and fill in what? The rewachewe means to put all our hopes in something. Rewa means hope. I've been looking for that. Rewa means hope. Chawe is this. It means all our hopes, but it has that sense of like this spontaneous movement of the mind that puts all our hope into something. The something that we're putting all our hopes into is, no, wait, sorry, I got ahead of myself. This movement of the mind of putting all our hopes into something arises on its own, arises from us. Wrong topki. Wrong means self, itself. Topki means by the power of itself. The mind of, I'll put all my hopes in this particular object, arises from its own side. Nobody says, oh, call the fire department. Your house is on fire. You've learned what you do when your house is on fire is you call the fire department. But in the moment of what is my refuge, eek, my house is on fire. Ah, who do I call? The fire department. You don't have to call your mother to say, who do I call? Your own mind knows what to do. So all of this refuges, the movement of the mind that of its own accord knows that we can put all our hopes into Yul Shenla, another object. Right? It feels like I just let you down. What am I putting all my hopes into that I know spontaneously? The other object. Yul means object, Shenla means other. So the definition of refuge, not Buddhist refuge, is the movement of the mind that from its own accord puts all its hopes into another object. The fire department. If you're a little kid and you're in trouble, you go running to mom. You know to go running to mom. You don't go to your baby sister for protection. And you don't go to your baby sister to say, who do I go to for help? You go to where the help is, mom. Refuge, plain old refuge. When we're hungry, we go for refuge in food. Wisdom would be, when I'm hungry, I would go for refuge in feeding somebody else. But wait, I'm still hungry after that. Right? It's not so straightforward as it seems to be at the beginning. How are we doing here? So in English, refuge is that movement of the mind which of its own power puts all its hopes in another object, meaning an external object. Shou Yan Lam implies external to ourselves. Refuge means my protection. Where do I believe my protection can come from? In order for this movement of the mind to be Rangtobki Chewa Chawe, meaning of its own accord, putting all my hopes in that other object, two factors need to be in play. One is that there's an element of fear. Fear meaning not like shaking in our tracks kind of fear, but the fear of, I can't do this myself. I can't fix this myself, or I'm in trouble. Until we notice, realize, recognize that we have a problem, we won't have this movement of the mind that finds who can be the solution to our problem. So they call it fear. We could say, I have to recognize I have a problem. I have to recognize I'm in some kind of difficulty. They're calling that fear. And then we need an element of belief that the object we go to can in fact help. You know, again, our house is on fire. We don't call your grocer, right? You don't call your pharmacist when your house is on fire, because we don't have that belief that they can and will help, right? Maybe they call the fire department for you, but right, we just wouldn't do that. We call the thing, the other, that we already believe has the power to help us. In regular worldly refuge, this is the same. This is really what we're talking about. The classic example of that, they say, suppose you're out in a park and there's a pavilion over there on the other side of the park, and you're standing in the middle of the park and it suddenly starts to rain and it's this downpour and you're getting so wet. We can stand there. I go for refuge in the pavilion. I go for refuge in the pavilion. I go for refuge in the pavilion, but you're standing in the middle of the park. While you're saying your refuge, you are still getting wet. You don't have to say any words at all. Just run to the pavilion and you stop getting wet, right? It takes an action for that, what we go to for a refuge, to in fact help us. Worldly, we would say, yeah, the action is I have to pick up the phone and call the fire department. I have to go and get the cup of tea. And in Buddhist refuge, we're going to see that the action necessary is this change of behavior, that our refuge object is either demonstrating by being Sangha Dharma jewel, or that we have come to realize ourselves, if we ourselves are Sangha Dharma jewel, and or whatever Buddha jewel has been teaching us through the Dharma jewel, whoever's doing that for us, all of it helping us take an action that will really be protective. Like, run to the pavilion, for crying out loud. Put up your umbrella. Don't just stand there and say the words and expect something to happen. Yes, Lisa.
When we say our refuge prayer in the morning and at night, not I have to confess many times I just do it like a parrot.
Me too.
Like I just repeat the words and then I think what I'm saying here, but I cannot feel the words with some meaning in that specific moment of the day many times.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what is your advice on that? Is that like, yeah, how to fill those words with meaning? Like how can I really say I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and all this with some
Yeah.
meaning behind, like really
Right.
mean it.
Right. Yeah. Have meaning behind them. So ideally, you take those same words and you work with them to trigger a feeling of if I don't yell, I'm going to eventually stop all yelling people. If I don't yell from anger, I'm going to stop all yelling angry people. If I don't act from my anger, I'm going to stop all anger in my existence someday. But pick one that opens your heart. Maybe it's the other way around. If I can ooze kindness, I'm going to make a world where every being around me is oozing kindness. And oh, how cool that would be. And ideally, you are thinking that while you're saying the words. If that doesn't happen, change the words, but don't change the meaning. Take refuge in karma and emptiness if that feels more immediate. I take refuge in knowing that everything I do is planting seeds for my future, and I'm trying to make a good future for everybody. Say that 3 times, and you are doing your refuge prayer. Maybe add to it. And I have people who are teaching me how, thank you very much. I have people that are showing me how, thank you very much. Right. It's more important to be inspired than it is to say the words exactly right. But there's no reason those words can't trigger the same idea. Right? Good question. So what are those 2 elements that need to be present for a refuge? Fear and faith. They call it fear and faith, but that word's so loaded, right? Fear and belief in the object of refuge. Belief that they can help. All right, let's take a break. Now I will pause the recording, my recording. Pause my recording. Oh, I'm not a host. Oh no, there it went. There, okay. Thank you.
Lama, just some short organizational thing for the ACI to send to the dean. Unfortunately, my karma is creating strange things now. My aunt is in the hospital, so I have been very, yeah, I don't know. I'm going through a purification, I think. So I am a bit short with time, but I will do that by this weekend to Rashana explain me everything.
Okay,
So I
great.
will send
Okay,
the
great.
things.
Yeah, no,
But sorry, I'm a bit delayed. Just wanted
Yeah.
to let you know.
no worries. Thank you.
Mama Sarahni,
Veronica,
thank you
hello.
for your teaching. But I'm so sorry I have to leave. I just want to tell you. But I will come back again
Okay, please.
and making up everything. So
Okay,
please keep teaching.
thank you, my dear. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. I'll see you. Bye-bye.
Okay, are we back? I will start my recording. Okay, so mostly we've been talking about a category of refuge called ordinary refuge. I've been calling them worldly refuges. All the things that we go to as sources of happiness, whether it's the happiness of just getting out of a difficult problem or the happiness of like getting a need met or even achieving a goal. As we learn on our spiritual path, we come to recognize that those objects that we're going to for refuge don't work. They fall short. And so at some point, we start looking for something that tells us why. And we're hoping that we'll get a glimmer that there's something that won't fall short. And sooner or later, we come to what's called exceptional refuge, that in our tradition, we would call Buddhist refuge. And then within that, there's refuge in the nominal refuge objects, nominal Buddha, nominal Dharma, nominal Sangha. And there's refuge in the three jewels. So the nominal Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. That nominal Buddha is when you think Shakyamuni Buddha. Nominal doesn't mean they don't really exist. They're appearing nature. Buddha jewel is not Shakyamuni. Buddha jewel is that being of ultimate love, ultimate compassion, ultimate wisdom that in our world appeared once upon a time as Shakyamuni Buddha, who reached that place by becoming a Sangha jewel and Dharma jewel, which means gaining those realizations in their minds. So exceptional Buddhist or exceptional refuge, Buddhist refuge, those two aspects, the fear is the fear of samsara and the perpetuating of it. It's a little more specific, but it's big. Fear of samsara is, right, life as we know it. And then our movement of mind with all our hopes and certainty that they will help goes to the nominal refuge objects and to the three jewels refuge objects, because the three jewels is that we're going to, for protection in the gaining of those realizations in our own heart. And those three nominal refuges are who and what will help us gain the three realizations of our own. And that's where real protection comes from, is doing what we need to do to gain and then live by those realizations along the path. There are 5 divisions of exceptional refuge. Here's the Tibetan for them. See if I can. That's going to go to a new screen if I. Gebu, Chung, Dring, Chempo, Sum. That's the first 3. That's what Sum means. Drebuyu Kamdro and Gui Kamdro is the last 2. So I'm going to start from the front because we need to work on these 3 first. Gebu. Gebu is the word that we use for a practitioner of lesser scope, beginning scope. Beginning scope means this is the minimum motivation that we would have for declaring ourselves as a Buddhist. The minimal motivation for going for refuge in the 3 jewels is out of fear of our own lower rebirth at the end of this lifetime. And we have this belief that the three jewels, the three nominals, will teach us to gain the needed realizations in our own mind through which we will stop that possibility of a lesser rebirth. So this minimum motivation as a Buddhist is to be concerned with where I go in my next life, what happens in my next life. Our willingness to change our behavior in this life is driven out of a fear of a lesser realm rebirth, and so we will behave differently in this life. Our spiritual function is not about results we get in this life. It's directed towards next life and lives beyond that, of course. With that motivation, our refuge objects teach us, how to avoid doing the 10 non-virtues. How to keep our morality such that we decrease significantly the likelihood of having the seeds that could ripen as a rebirth, as a animal hungry ghost or a hell being. And if we don't really believe in hell beings and hungry ghosts, it's really enough to think, well, how awful it would be to be a reborn as an animal. And although, I've heard people say, oh, I want to be reborn as an eagle so I can soar above, and it's like, yeah, okay, that sounds really nice, but it's a big struggle to be an eagle, and mostly your babies die and you have to struggle and kill things, and you don't have the option to choose your behavior as an animal much. And so you can't make spiritual progress. As pleasant as it might be to come back as Flavia's cat, that poor cat still has to eat meat, and at best it can live a life of love and die loved. But the likelihood of it reaching its Buddhahood in that lifetime is pretty remote from its side. Chung means medium. Sorry. Dring, Chempo soon. Chempo is great. Chung Dring is the medium scope. Medium scope refuge includes the lower scope refuge. I want to stop the possibility of going to a lesser rebirth. But at medium scope, you'll also understand enough about karma, the 12 links of dependent origination, that you have come to recognize that it is possible that you can stop all your mental afflictions forever, that you can stop any forced rebirth, that you can stop samsara for yourself. And so your refuge is in the karmic, the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha nominal, and the jewels that you're gathering in your mind at that level, through which you will close the doors to lesser rebirth and stop perpetuating samsara at all for yourself. So we have two. levels of refuge so far, Buddhist refuge so far. They also practice their morality very, very, very carefully. Chenpo means great scope. Great scope refuge shares the lesser scope refuge. I want to close the door to lesser rebirth. They share the medium scope refuge. I want to stop all my mental afflictions forever and stop perpetuating samsara. But they also have this motivation that recognizes that every existing being is in the same sinking ship they are in, and that they realize samsara can be stopped by everybody, for everybody. And our motivation is, I want to become the one who will do it for the everybody of my world. So they have motivation shared with the lesser scopes. The lesser scopes, of course, don't share the ones above them. This person avoids the non-virtues, works with their karma, and works with their bodhicitta in order to change their behaviors in the way necessary that will bring about the goal that they see, that they wish to achieve. Total Buddhahood for the sake of all beings. So those are the three, here's the five. Kebut Kyamdro, first one. Chungdring Kyamdro, lesser scope, medium scope refuge. Chenpo, Kyamdro, greater scope refuge. Then we have Dre, Bui, Kamdro, and Gui Kyamdro. Dre, Bui, Kamdro means going for refuge in the result. Result refuge. Gui Kyamdro means going for refuge in the cause. Causal refuge. Going for refuge in the result. Dre, Bui. Dre means result. Gu means cause. I'm going to stop the share because we don't need it anymore. Going for refuge in the result means going for refuge in one's own future Sanghahood, Dharma jewelhood, and Buddhahood. Going for refuge means changing our behavior based upon something that the Sangha, nominal Sangha, nominal Dharma, and nominal Buddha has taught us. And when we are at the higher, cool, can I get away with that? No, forget that. When we are taking refuge in the result, we are recognizing that by following what these teachers and teachings teach me, I'm planting my seeds to get the result that I'm motivated to plant those seeds for. And that due to the endless nature of my mind stream and that lack of self-nature of that mind stream, it then means that it is inevitable that this one will someday perceive its own mind body as this being that is a manifestation of ultimate love, ultimate compassion, ultimate wisdom. And although this me is thinking that one is still in the future, you can also recognize, but if there's an enlightened being who's omniscient now, there, and they see me, which they must because I exist, then they also see the future fully enlightened being that this will be, don't they? It doesn't mean they already really exist for me, but they do already really exist for any one enlightened being, and I think there's more than one. So we can take our refuge because of understanding our own empty nature in that enlightened being that already is. Now it's dangerous because you could say, all right, then I've got my direct connection to my enlightened being, and all I have to do is listen, and they're going to tell me what to do in any given moment because they know exactly. And that little voice inside says, yell back at that person. And so you yell back. And then that little voice inside goes, I wasn't your enlightened self. I was your ignorant self. And thank you very much. We just delayed your reaching enlightenment by like eons. Well done. Thank you very much. So don't fool ourselves into saying, oh, I'm taking result refuge, so that means I can do nothing wrong. Right? We think, oh, that's stupid. We wouldn't do that. But it's tricky. It does give us the understanding, however, that our efforts to change our behaviors are going to be successful. No matter how puny they seem to be now, because of emptiness and karma, any little effort is going to grow. And when we make some big efforts, even when we seem to fail in that effort because the result doesn't come the way we expect, the effort has planted seeds. The effort plants seeds. The result we get from the apparent result that we get from our effort is really not related to what we just did. So we can train ourselves to be in that plant mode, almost independent of what's going on. Because we have the tools, we either have the vows, or at least we have the 10 non-virtues swapped over to be the 10 virtues. So how should I respond in this situation? This one. Oh, this one. And so we don't yell back when somebody's yelling at us and they even expect us to yell back. And so by not yelling back and saying, you know, how could I help you? We actually make them madder and they yell more. It's not because we just broke the cycle. It's because sometime in the past, when somebody responded in a way we didn't expect, we got upsetter. Okay, that next moment experience is coming from us as well. So refuge in the result is coming to this conviction that that fully enlightened being of this stream has already, it's already happened. And they're there for me. They're there for this one, knowing exactly what we need to do, right? Because they've already done it. Yeah, I made that mistake. Let's not do it again. It's a little schizophrenic. But when it starts to resonate, it's really, really helpful. Geshe used to say, when you're having a rough day, go to the bathroom, go in the stall and have a little chat with your future you. I'm so sorry. I'm delaying, my making you real for me by behaving by such a jerk. Please forgive me. Please help me. Please inspire me. May your kind words come out of my mouth instead of my stupid words. Please help me. Okay? You do it in the privacy of your own mind. At first. Yes, Luisa.
Sorry, but that means if I believe or if I have this conviction that my future Luisa, enlightened Luisa already exists because there are Buddhas out there who can see it already, it brings me this feeling of the wrong belief that there is a mini Buddha inside me that I just have to peel off.
I know.
Because it's already there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
I
if
do.
I'm already enlightened, why to bother?
Right. But you're not already enlightened from your side. You are already enlightened from another enlightened being's side. And so somehow our task now is to catch up with that or match it. It's not that they see inside us and see, oh, there's really a little Buddha in there. They're seeing our future. Which means I can do it. Because I'm empty. Because we're empty, that's why they can see us that way.
But they see us in our future. This is the kind of the misunderstanding I have. I understood before they see our potential to become a Buddha. Like they see we have the capacity.
Right.
But not that they see us already enlightened.
Cook it. Our potential is our emptiness. They still see that once we're fully enlightened. We see it too. And then they see our appearing. They're omniscient. They're omniscient. But it's just that argument that says, oh yeah, so I'm not enlightened. And it won't be enlightened Luisa that they see. Right? Luisa will be long gone. Another reason why it can't already be in here. Because inside here is Sarahni's. And it's not Sarahni that gets enlightened.
But if you do Tantra, it's Sarahni who gets enlightened. This is the promise. In one lifetime, no? So it's
but it's not Sarahni that does it. It's not the me that does it.
Oh, okay, understood. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Refuge in the result. Our spontaneous fear, I'm not the result yet. I'm perpetuating samsara. The movement of the mind that puts all my hopes in that refuge object future me because I figured out to do so. Now, I just gave you the suggestion. If it doesn't make sense, we're not going to spontaneously go for refuge to our own future Buddha me. But at some point, because you heard about it, and it'll cook, all of a sudden something will happen and you'll go, right? Oh, my faith, all my hopes get put into relying upon that future me makes sense. And our mind goes there. Don't force it until that because then it's not real refuge, because it's not this spontaneous movement of the mind to that object. But someday it will be. Then we have the Gui Kyamdro, which is going for refuge in the cause, or causal refuge, it's called. And this is the one that I remember, like, as when I became formally Buddhist, what I was thinking. That it means my mind moves from its own accord to a being other than myself who is already fully enlightened. And because I've come to understand how it is a being becomes fully enlightened, I now know that they know what I need to know, what I need to learn, what I need to do to reach that state as well. So once I understand that about a fully enlightened being, how they became it, and how that love compassion component was so critical to developing their wisdom into omniscience, that compassion is what propels their emanations, that all grew into this, oh, that's what I want to become. Because I had learned how they became that for themselves, for everyone, and what all those different steps, how they all came together for that to happen for them. It took me years after my formal taking Buddhist refuge. I'm going to say 10 years probably, before it really all like, oh, that's why I go for refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And then I could say, all right, I really do take refuge, whether I have the words being said or not, because of my understanding. Yeah. So going for refuge in the cause means going for refuge in a being other than ourselves who has already achieved one or more of the three jewels. So we can go for causal refuge in someone that we perceive is Sangha jewel, who would then also be Dharma jewel, but we're not necessarily perceiving them as Buddha jewel as well. And we can take refuge in a Buddha jewel who is also automatically Dharma jewel and Sangha jewel. The refuge is the change in behavior that we do as a result of what they teach us, how they're guiding us. So why take Buddhist refuge at all? There's a short-term benefit and a long-term benefit, apparently. In the short-term benefit, it means the benefit within this life, the benefit of taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. We already said that it's not even Buddhist refuge if our goal in our refuge is for some advantage in this life. But even though that's not our goal, we will still get some benefit in this life from taking our Buddhist living according to our Buddhist refuge, because our Buddhist refuge means our belief in these, how our behaviors create our future. And that will influence this future life, as well as future lives. even if we don't see the results of our change of behavior in this life, it has benefited this life because your own behavior is changing. You are getting more kind. Even if, as you get more kind, your outer experiences of your outer world just gets worse and worse and worse. You've still benefited from growing the habit of kindness. You're planting seeds for your future, and you're growing the ease with which you'll be able to do that in future. So things like learning, having that response to some situation that you feel like in a worldly way, you just can't do anything. And to rely then on Tonglen. It doesn't seem like we're doing anything, but the effect that it has on our own mind stream is huge. Same in the sense of learning to respond differently in a situation where ordinarily you would have yelled back. That's a skill that will be helpful in life. In the long term, the benefit of going for Buddhist refuge is that through it, we can and will eventually achieve our own Buddhahood. Refuge is the basis for living morally. And living morally is what leads to the direct perception of emptiness and serves as the foundation for the Diamond Way practices, if we go that far in this life, which gives us the opportunity to transform into fully enlightened being before this body dies. Without Buddhist refuge changing our behavior, even if we try the Diamond Way, it won't be successful. Bless you. So, what is it about a fully enlightened being that makes them such a powerful refuge? We would ask. And Geshe-la goes to the Uttara Tantra teachings by Lord Maitreya to us Sangha to answer this question, which some of us studied that recently, although there seems like a long time ago now. These 8 qualities of what it is to be a fully enlightened being is what helps us be able to rely upon them to guide us along the path. So these 8, one of the qualities of a Buddha is their quality of being, no, being isn't right, the uncaused quality of them. And it should be a conundrum in our minds. Wait, if a Buddha is uncaused, how can we collect the causes to become one? And it's not that a Buddha is uncaused, it's that a Buddha has a quality, and that quality is described as an uncaused quality. I don't know, English fails. What they mean, of course, is the Dharmakaya, the lack of self-existence of that Buddha's mind and appearing body is this quality of them that is uncaused. That makes them a powerful refuge object. The reason that makes them a powerful karmic object is that they teach us that, look, you have this uncaused quality in you now also. And because of that thing that's uncaused, we can plant the seeds to ripen our perception of ourselves as this fully enlightened being, who will still have this quality that we're calling the uncaused quality. Because the emptiness is not caused by anything. Our friend, the pen, that we've learned about the emptiness of, that being the pen doesn't cause an emptiness to come into appearance. A pen here has to have a no-self nature to be the pen that we see. But the empty nature isn't a caused thing. It's just there or not there. Second of these 8 that makes a fully enlightened being a powerful refuge object is they have a quality of spontaneous. By spontaneous, what they mean is that being spontaneously, effortlessly appears to any being who's ready to perceive them in the way that they are ready to perceive them. And they explain this by way of the analogy of the moon reflecting in a body of water. If the full moon is in the sky and there is a still body of water anywhere, no matter how big, no matter how small, spontaneously, the moon will reflect in the body of water. The water doesn't have to do anything. Hey, moon, I'm ready. And the moon doesn't have to do anything. Hello, body of waters, where are you? It just happens. In that same way, Buddha's emanations, propelled by their compassion, their holy great compassion, is like the moon in the body of water. The extent to which any of us are ready to see a Buddha is the extent to which we will see them. Are they going to be the Magadi dog or Lord Maitreya or the, lady making the needles against the rock? Or what will they look like? Are they ever not appearing to us from their side? Yeah, you'd have to say no, right? How often do we actually go, oh, that was a Buddha? I'm working so hard to be one of their emanations for others that it never occurs to me that that other is one of them. And yet, like, why can't every rock or every fly that crawls up your nose be a Buddha? Like, why would a Buddha annoy me so much? Right. Yeah, why would they? Because they know I'm ready to burn it off. Yeah, but I'm going to not burn it off. I'm going to be annoyed, and then I'm going to make terrible karma because I'm annoyed with a Buddha. But would I be annoyed if I have that spontaneous thought, oh, that Buddha's crawling up my nose, right? And it's a paradise for them. Would I react differently? I hope so. Spontaneous, they are spontaneous.
Lama, sorry, can I ask a question to that?
Okay.
It
Yes.
sounds like as if they decide. I don't know, it gives me this feeling of God again. Like, all right, they are just there and then they just decide to show up. And I think, as I understand, it's our karma that, or is it that they see our karma, I don't know, our
No.
program, and then they say, okay, now Luisa has the karma for me to show up.
No, but that's what the term spontaneous is trying to override. They are spontaneously, effortlessly being what we need. It's our karma that ripens as us being aware of that or not. But from their side, their compassion is being whatever all of us need for each one of us. To me, it's the opposite of what you're just saying. If they weren't spontaneous, they'd be sitting up there in Buddha Paradise watching Luisa. And it's like, is she ready? Is she qualified? Has she pleased me enough that I'll go down and help her out? Or has she really shot herself in the foot and now she needs, a slap on the hand? Or to me, that would not be spontaneous. That would be very contrived on their part. But spontaneous means their love just shows up.
But then we have a dedicated Buddha, because if all the Buddhas are trying to help us, then they are emanating simultaneously. I don't know, it's a bit like crazy.
I know it is. We are surrounded. We are breathing them. We are walking on them. We are eating them.
Okay, this is too much for me at the moment. But
All
thank
right.
you.
Louisa has a very literal mind. I know that. All right, number 3. They are realized by no other way. Meaning, that the emptiness of the Dharmakaya cannot be perceived conceptually. It cannot be perceived with the sense perception. It cannot be imagined. It can only be experienced directly. Can be realized by no other way, okay, other than directly. It doesn't mean you can only become a Buddha by being Buddhist. Does not mean that. Four, 5, and 6 of the 8 is that they have knowledge.
I'm sorry. Did you say it doesn't mean that?
It does not mean that.
It doesn't mean that. Okay. I don't understand what it means, but I translated correctly.
The Dharmakaya can only be perceived directly, is what it means to be they are realized by no other way. It does not mean that you have to be a Buddhist in order to come to recognize that there are things called Buddhas in the world. Because we might think that a Buddha is realized in no other way. We might think means, well, you have to be a Buddhist to realize that Buddhas really exist. And that's not what the no other way means. It means direct perception of emptiness is necessary to get there. And that even once we're there, our Dharmakaya is directly perceived always. by us and other Buddhas. And no other way. Has to be direct. Then 4, 5, 6. They have knowledge, love, and power. Knowledge refers to a fully enlightened being's awareness of our suffering condition. If they are aware of our suffering and they don't care about us, they wouldn't help us. And so we wouldn't go to them for refuge because we wouldn't know for sure that they would help if we don't know that they care. So their love is their care for us. The knowledge is they know our suffering. Their love is that they want our happiness. They know it's possible. They know it's inevitable. They want us to reach it. And then even that would not be helpful unless they were able to do something. And that's the term power, knowledge, love, and power. But the power means their power to teach. Their power to teach comes from their own personal experience of what it took for them to overcome their belief in their own true nature and the selfishness that drives. Grown to include, right, that towards all existing things and beings. Their power is not the power to make things happen for us. They are not omnipotent. We can't blame Buddhas for what happens to us. But wait, you just said they're emanating as that angry, yelling boss. So they are making that happen to me. But they're not. Because our seeds are making us see them as angry, yelling boss. They're not making us see them as angry, yelling boss. They're not the angry, yelling boss. There is no angry, yelling boss. Other than the one we're making onto something that's blank. That's empty. Knowledge, love, and power. The power to guide us, to teach us, to inspire us, to challenge us. But they don't have the power to make our karma change. They don't have the power to even make us change our behavior. Wouldn't that be frustrating? How can being a Buddha not be wickedly frustrating? Like, Sarahni, would you just get it? I was at a teaching by somebody once, and she was quoting, I think it was Rumi. And Rumi's poetry, is so extraordinary. And he was talking to God, his beloved, and he was saying something like, look, would you just pick me up by the heels and shake me until all this crap comes out of my pockets? And then put me down and I'll be fixed. And it's like, that really struck my heart. It's like, so, I'm dealing with my tantric deity, and it's just like, just shake me up and down until it all comes out, would you? And I think she's doing that. I just don't interpret it quite like that, So how frustrating that must be. She's going, I'm doing exactly what you asked me for. And what's the matter with you? You're still begging for more? You're not even changing? Come on, get with it. I'm sorry. I'm such a challenge to her. All right, 7 and 8. I am going to finish this class. Number 7 and number 8 is they fulfill both needs. So the wording is precise here. They fulfill both needs. So this is 7 and 8. 7 is they fulfill their needs. And 8 is I have to say this again. 7 and 8 is they fulfill both needs. Then they say, when you're breaking them apart and describing them, once a Buddha is a Buddha, they have fulfilled their needs. They've become Buddha. That's what they wanted. That's what their goal was. They have achieved it. And they have fulfilled our needs. So they have the quality of fulfilling both needs, meaning it's an ongoing thing. But when we pin it down, they've already fulfilled their own needs. And we want to say, and they'll go on to fulfill mine. But they say, no, they have already fulfilled our needs. And it's a conundrum. One of those things we need to cook for a while, because it shows us how in our linear thinking, they're going to teach me how to do this, and this, and I'm going to get there. But from their side, I want to say they're not linear thinkers anymore. Right? They're perceiving everything all the time. Can we say they're spherical thinkers? I don't know. They're not thinkers at all, actually, because everything is direct for them, for a being, a fully enlightened being. So we could say, yeah, they perceive my fully enlightened me who has fulfilled all my goals. And they perceive me that doesn't see myself that way. And so I've still got goals to fulfill. And they would go, right, you have goals to fulfill, but I've already fulfilled them. Not meaning for me, for them. Right? It's a cooker, I admit. I don't have it straight myself. Because how can they have fulfilled my goals when I still, need, I was going to say I still need to go to the grocery for food, but I don't. Somebody else does that. And I was going to say, and I still need to have money to pay for food, but I don't, because a whole bag of groceries and dinner showed up on our doorstep today. And it's like, and I go, oh yeah, I know who sent those to me. I know who brought me the groceries. They had to pay for them. But you see, I'm making an error there. I could be saying, look, my generosity creates a world where your needs just show up. And why do I have to impose old world view and say, oh, well, they had to pay for them? Maybe they didn't. Maybe they just had the thought, okay, tortillas and beans and there it is in a Trader Joe's bag. Cool. Is that fantasy thinking? Yes, unless I do it because of karma and emptiness and because I want everybody to have a world where what they need just shows up. It could be, couldn't it? Why not? Okay. All right. So these 8 qualities of Buddha, when we first learn them, we're grappling with them about learning what they are like. what the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are like. But at some point, it's important to look at these 8 qualities and recognize, well, if I'm going to be a Buddha someday, I'm going to have these 8 qualities someday. And what's that going to be like? And what do I think I needed to do to create the merit and wisdom to create those, to create the me that has those? That's really a more useful way to look at this teaching. Yes, we learn what Buddhas are like, but in doing so, we learn what we're going to be like. And that's a clue about how to behave now to create ourselves into that. I think we'll see that we're really probably not so far from it as we might think. All right, I'm not directly perceiving my uncausedness, but I can perceive my spontaneousness if I just stop to think about it. I lead an exercise group with 4 or 5 other seniors, and we, just be silly. And if I were to recognize anything that I do to lead this group in exercise is spontaneously being exactly what their karma is ripening in the moment. I'm kind of being in my spontaneous quality. And so anytime we're with others, we're being spontaneously what their karma is ripening. And they're doing that for us. What's another one? Spontaneous. Reach no other way than the direct. Kind of hard to play with that one when you're outside your meditation. Knowledge, love, and power. What if you knew exactly what would be the most helpful for that other person? Would our love be strong enough that, what would be an example? I can't think of one. Say we're in a situation, somebody looks like they need something and we don't feel capable of really helping. So we decide, well, I'll just smile at them and that'll be enough. And then we push ourselves instead of smiling, and instead we challenge them in some way. And our intention was to help them see the way they were stuck. And are we willing to risk them getting upset with us in our effort to help them in a deeper way than just smiling and walking on? Knowledge, love, and power. How would we use it? Okay, good. So you have now what you need to finish ACI 1 and class 1 and then class 2. Okay. Alrighty. So remember that person we wanted to be able to help? We learned a lot that we will use sooner or later to help them in that deep and ultimate way. And that's an extraordinary goodness. So please be happy with yourself. Your future Buddha you is very happy with yourself. And think of this goodness like a beautiful glowing gemstone that you can hold in your hand. Recall that precious holy guide there with you. See how happy they are with you. Grow your gratitude to them, your reliance upon them. Ask them to please continue to guide you, inspire you, help you. And then offer them this gemstone of goodness. See them accept it and bless it. And they carry it with them right back into your heart. See them there, feel them there. That love, that compassion, that wisdom. It feels so good, we want to keep it forever. And so we know to share it by the power of the goodness that we've just done. May all beings complete the collection of merit and wisdom, and thus gain the two ultimate bodies that merit and wisdom make. So use those 3 long exhales to share this goodness with that one person. To share it with everyone you love. To share it with every being you've ever seen or heard of. See them all filled with happiness, filled with kindness, and may it be so. All right, thank you very much. We are on our way. I will send you my vocabulary list so you don't need the whiteboard thing and the audio. Okay. And we're Thursday. Have a great weekend. I'll see you on Monday. Okay.
Thank you, Lama. No,
Thank
Sunday.
Sunday? Next
Sunday.
class
I'll
is-
see you on Sunday. Right. My new schedule has me all confused. I will see you on Sunday. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.